Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And,
yeah, it just blows my mind. But can you believe that dissent?
That is absolute pure
rubbish.
Yeah, okay.
To quote
no,
that's my British.
to say it in a nice
way. They call it
way.
Rubbish. Yeah, that's a dissent. Okay, now here's the scary part. You ready for this, people? Guys, listen carefully. This is what Scalia's death means. They overturned DC's ban, and I might even have Scalia. What Scalia said. I want to read what Scalia said because this is critical. Decision. Okay, so the Supreme Court held that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia and to use that firearm for traditionally lawful purposes such as self-defense within the home. And then it goes on into details into that, but that's like a main thing. And like most rights, the Second Amendment right is not unlimited. It is not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever in any manner whatsoever or for whatever purpose. For example, concealed weapons prohibitions have been upheld under amendment or state. So it goes on to go into detail, but the main thing is it does uphold the right of all people everywhere in the United States to keep and bear arms for traditionally lawful purposes. So that is what they have concluded. Now, here's the scary part. This is the scary part. This is the consequences of Scalia's death. That was decided 5-4. Do you know what that means?
That means that if the Supreme Court justice decided 5-4 to uphold the ban of guns in D.C., that's like a cancerous tumor. D.C. becomes a tumor that then starts to spread through the rest of the states.
No. They would have completely abolished the Second Amendment. In fact, let me be more clear. Let me be crystal
Especially
clear.
The one justice said you got to be in a militia to have a gun.
Yes. Let me be crystal clear. If Scalia and by the way, this was not the 70s. This was not the 60s. This was not
this is back in the 30s.
This was not in 1890.
Oh, this must have been during Vietnam.
2011.
Oh!
It started in 2008.
Oh!
Ended in 2011. Let me tell you something. If this case was 5 years later and Scalia died 1 year earlier,
it's going to come back up again.
Well, maybe not this particular case because it's been ruled on.
Something different, something different,
something similar, something different.
They're going to come up and trick it and twist it.
Oh yeah, they're going to have a whole new case. But let me tell you something. That's how close we came to losing the Second Amendment, and Scalia's gone now. The next time the Constitution is under siege at all times, and the 5 justices that were there to uphold the Constitution are under siege by the other 4. They are part of the siege. Now it's 4-4 when Obama, the communist who hates America and forget that.
No, he hates the Constitution.
That's the key. He hates the Constitution
so much. Because it's in his way.
He's going to nominate and get pushed through a communist hating, anti-American, anti-Constitution communist. Trust me, they will be. And when you listen to that dissent, what does that dissent tell you? When you heard that dissent, when it's talking about you got to be in a militia, and by the way, DC's not a state, what does that tell you? It tells you they don't care what it says.
Right.
They don't care what the Constitution says as long as they are operating under the ideology that we must transform, we need to abolish the Constitution. They're going to rule whatever way they need to, and they're going to write a dissent that is whatever the hell they want. And doesn't it sound like whatever the hell they want?
Absolutely it does.
But you know what? I don't think that it applies because you're not in a militia. Well, guess what? If you read the text of the Second Amendment, you're wrong. It doesn't matter that they're wrong because as soon as it goes 5-4 their way, the Second Amendment is abolished.
It's just like that. Just as fast as Garage came down the pipe. They went 5-4 on Garage, shoved it down our throat, and now made us all take it in.
Well,
and we don't want to. And we don't want to take
here's
it.
what's worse. Garage isn't really specifically mentioned in detail in the Constitution. Okay.
You know what? Scalia talked about that.
Well, hold on. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole yet.
I know.
What I'm saying is the Second Amendment is probably, I truly would argue, out of all the amendments written by our founding fathers, the Second Amendment might be the most clear, cut and dry, easy to read, easy to follow, easy to interpret amendment in the entire Constitution. And yet, four justices said, you know what? I know that's what it says, but, it says militia too, and so let's just twist this all up. Are you out of your mind?
It's an old piece of paper.
It's old. It's outdated. They used muskets. They used, what are those things called? Slingshots.
Right.
That's what they meant by arms. They had shields.
They didn't know.
They had shields.
Yeah. However, we did report on this show that we learned that they had repeating firearms, like fully automatic firearms back in the day.
Where did we get that article?
From old boy. From
was it Breitbart or
No. We watched the video.
Was it P.P. Simmons?
Yeah.
Yeah. The argument that they didn't have the kind of technology, or they didn't. Here's the argument: they didn't know. If the founding fathers knew that the technology was going to explode so much for firearms, they would have reworded or they would have written that totally differently.
Right.
If not disallow the right to bear arms altogether.
Right.
But there's, I guess P.P. Simmons put out a video proving that the founding fathers must have known all about the advancements in technology, including repeating rifles, automatic rifles, ones that reload themselves and can fire as fast as you can turn a crank, which is what they had back then. They were experimental, but listen, our founding fathers and everybody else who was relatively intelligent back in the 1700s were just as smart as all the smart people there are today. In fact, based on what I read in that dissent, I would argue that they were way smarter than we are today. And so to argue that they wouldn't have known this stuff because they were too stupid or whatever they want to try to say, I just disprove that right there. So, but I don't think that it's stupidity that causes Justice Henderson to write that dissent. My argument is that they are just saying whatever they need to say to abolish the amendments that they don't like or any other part of the Constitution that they don't like, because they know as soon as they pass it 5-4, that law is gone.
Yeah, it's over with.
They're going to call the Constitution unconstitutional.
pretty much so. So check this out. Scalia on Garage, he said homosexuality is like murder.
Really?
Yeah.
Why's that?
He hints to Coloradians that have been guilty of animus or animosity towards homosexuality as though that has been established as un-American. And he writes, I had thought that one could consider certain conduct reprehensible, murder, for example, or polygamy, or cruelty to animals, and could exhibit even animus towards such conduct. So what he's saying is,
this is mental gymnastics.
What he's saying is, it's a given.
It's self-evident.
Yes, you know that murder is wrong. So doing an act of that nature, it inherently...
He's literally, he's indirectly saying it's self-evident.
Right. And so he says homosexuality, in a different situation, he said, homosexuality is kind of like flagpole sitting.
What? Shut up.
No. Hold on. I remember this from history class. Otherwise, yes.
What?
It comes off sounding wrong, but it's funny. But it's funny. I think he did that on purpose.
What does flagpole sitting mean? I'm getting a visual.
There, at one time back in the day, it was a
Time-honored tradition? What?
It was kind of like, those kids who do it now where they
I'm making faces at Brian.
who take pictures of themselves like standing on the edge of a building about to fall.
Okay.
All that kind of thing. That's like real popular now. Well, back in the day, it was hugely popular to climb a flagpole and sit on it. On the top.
Okay.
Flagpole
I'm
sitting.
glad you're giving me this background because I was not.
Well, it caught my eye and I grabbed it and I started reading it. Okay, so flagpole sitting was a big sport, if you will, back in the turn of the century.
Okay.
Well, almost every state in the United States had banned it.
Okay.
The flagpole sitting is banned. You can't do that. You're going to hurt yourself.
It's dangerous.
Well, we're going to protect you from yourself.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Right. Okay, so Scalia says, homosexuality is like flagpole sitting. Suppose that all the states had laws against flagpole sitting at one time, which they then overturned. All the states overturned. It's not illegal anymore. Does that make flagpole sitting a fundamental right? Just because there was laws against homosexuality, or homosexuality is not written in the Constitution. Homosexuality is not recognized as marriage and good and acceptable. Okay, Supreme Court Justice overturned it and says, okay, yeah, we're good to go. And he's saying flagpole sitting was banned. Now it's not banned. But does that make it a fundamental right?
That it's not banned.
Right.
Of course not.
Right. Just because homosexuality is not banned anymore doesn't make it a fundamental right of people that want to engage in that act, that it should be a fundamental right. That's what he's saying.
It should be, is what what is his opinion?
Well, I'm trying to read into it.
So does he think it's a right or not?
No.
Okay.
It's just as much as flagpole sitting would be a fundamental right.
Right.
How is that a fundamental right?
So his argument is just because it's not banned anywhere doesn't mean that it's a right.
Right, a fundamental right.
Right. So flagpole sitting is not illegal anywhere, but it can be illegal somewhere.
Correct.
It can become illegal.
Correct.
You don't just say. So his argument is well, just because it's not banned right now doesn't mean that we prohibit it from being banned for anywhere in the future.
Right.
Oh, okay. I agree with that.
Right. So back in this is from Business Insider. Back in 2013, August 2013, Justice Scalia, there was an article that said, "My decisions are sometimes stupid and even cruel." They had to go with that. They had to run with that. Mm-hmm. But once you get into the article and you read it, it goes like this. When Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia spoke earlier this week, that was back in 2013, he admitted his legal conclusions aren't always very nice, reports. But Scalia told a group of Republican lawmakers he interprets the Constitution strictly, regardless of the results.
Okay.
So basically he's saying, I'm not doing what they're looking for a specific result, so they're going to read the Constitution to get to that result. What Scalia says, I don't care what the results are. I'm going to go to the Constitution, and where I end up with, where it leads me, because I'm going to interpret it strictly on the words, the results are what they are. I can't control that.
That makes perfect sense, because when Henderson's dissent said that, well, you know what? It only applies to those that are currently serving in a militia.
Right. Yeah, of course. She was looking for results.
So just
a specific result.
She was. This is exactly what she said. She said, "You know what? We need to figure out how to send this thing. Find something.
Right?
Can we find anything? Because here's what it is. I personally believe. This is her speaking. I personally believe that the Second Amendment is a bunch of crap. It should be abolished, and I don't think anybody in the entire country outside of the military and police force should have any arms whatsoever, any rights to own them, keep them, bear them in any way, shape, or form.